Welcome to Education Matters, presented by the Public School Forum of North Carolina. I'm your host, Marianne Wolf. School leadership is a critical component when it comes to effective learning outcomes for our students. On today's show, we will be talking with some amazing guests about the system of principal development and recruitment for a qualified and well-prepared principal in every school. I'd like to welcome to the show Kisha Clemons, the Wells Fargo Principal of the Year, and Brent Williams, the 2021 A. Craig Phillips Superintendent of the Year. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So I wanted to start out, because we are focused on principals today, how are principals doing, especially during COVID?
Well, I will first of all say that, principals by nature exhibit courage and resilience and provide hope to all the people that, we serve. It's what we do. And leading through a crisis is no different than that. We're constantly managing the needs of our students and our staff and our families. But I think it is important to remember that principals are facing the same kind of challenges that teachers are facing. Challenges in keeping students engaged and attending school and making up for the loss of time of not being in school, and supporting teachers and ensuring that we have designed a digital learning environment that is conducive to student needs, getting resources, the list goes on. So I think that principals are doing the very best that they can. They always rise to the occasion to do the very best for their students and staff and community. But it has been a very challenging year, and we are trying to work together and really collaborating so that we can constantly think about how we address some of the problems and issues that we're facing.
Brent, I know from your perspective as a superintendent, a principal's role has always been challenging. I know you've also served as a principal. How do you see the principals in your district and those that you work with? How do you see them doing right now too?
As Kisha said, she did an outstanding job of really covering the essence of the situation for our school leaders. We have amazing school leaders in our district and across the state. Our principals do an outstanding job every day. And as she referenced, just trying to handle the myriad responsibilities and not only to complete tasks, but in this moment of pandemic and recovery, in this time of conducting school every day in ways that have never been necessary for situations that have never existed. Our principals have stepped forward, they've stepped up, and they're doing amazing things. They're not bystanders, they're upstanders. We see that every day. We see it in the hallways, in the classrooms. We see our principals calling parents, working with kids. Every situation is unique. Working with health departments, conducting contact tracing in our district. We're doing the testing clinics, and we're going to start week after next with the vaccine clinics for teachers, just doing everything we can. And all of that is on the shoulders of our principals. It feels like a massive weight all the time for a principal. And 20 years ago, I became a principal, and it was then and always will be one of the greatest things in the world to be to me. I hold it near and dear, and I love our principals. We have an outstanding lineup of principals, but every day, a principal said to me once, I have to try to do all things for all people and be all things to all people. And we know that our teachers are in the classrooms, and they're part nurse and part social worker and part parent and part instructor. But in this moment of pandemic and recovery, what I see is very rewarding, as she referenced, the resilience of our community, of our students, of our parents who are also cooperative in the process now in ways that they've never had to be. They're collaborating on the teaching and learning process in even greater ways than they always have. But our parents, our teachers, our principals are having to step to the fore and confront things that have never been confronted. The intensity of need is so significant, as she referenced, with our digital learning plans and our remote learning that we're trying to do at the same time in tandem, working with we're in option B in Lenore County and working with the blended learning and just trying to make all the pieces fit for our kids. But the most significant thing, the social and emotional trauma and crisis that our kids have experienced. We've had in Eastern North Carolina 3 hurricanes in 3 years. And then in year 4, we have COVID. And now in year 5, we're still dealing with COVID. So 5 out of 6 years, we've dealt with that which has never been faced by these young people before, and these intense, traumatic crisis moments, and we're still trying to recover.
Kisha, one of the things that we know is so important is to have a highly qualified and well-prepared principal for every school. And what do you see as some of those biggest challenges, including as it comes to working conditions?
When you think about principals and recruiting and making sure that we provide conditions where they are successful and effective as they serve their students and their staff and their community. One of the things that I think that principals need is always a voice at the table, to really communicate what's happening in the trenches. They are directly working with students and staff and families. And so I think always making sure that principals have that voice and to be able to communicate the needs of their school community. I also think that it is critical for principals to have professional development and ongoing coaching that's personalized to their needs. And just like we approach teachers and new teachers with providing them ongoing mentoring and support, principals need the same thing. They need that support at the principal level, but also district level support and accessibility to those district level leaders in helping to do the work. One of the things also was references about this work-life balance. Oftentimes, principals I call principals are superheroes. And as a superhero, we think that we have to do everything for everyone, and it can become very heavy. And so I think that ongoing support to make sure that the workload is not too heavy and that we're thinking about the needs of the principals as they are leading their students and their staff and their community, whether it's a crisis or not. I think that work-life balance and providing that support is critical to having working conditions that are conducive to the work.
Brent, as you think about your own district, but also districts across the state, what can be done to recruit and retain more school leaders, and how should we be preparing them? What is needed there?
The most important factor in teaching and learning is the teacher who's in that classroom. And in turn, another very important and critical factor is the person in that building who's the instructional leader in the front office, the principal teacher, the head teacher, who is supporting all of those teachers. And in turn, I believe it's very important for district level administration to support and empower and nourish those leaders, as Kisha referenced, with deep, wide, research-based, tangible professional development that they can go out and make significant changes in their own practices and changes in what they're doing. And recruiting and retaining the best and brightest leaders is not an isolated silo-driven endeavor where we just go to a recruitment fair. And we do that like everybody else. Mostly in Eastern North Carolina and mostly in Leavenworth County, we have embraced the grow your own initiative mindset and really trying to do what we can to bring up our own, to mentor, to identify the teacher leaders in our classrooms and to say to them, we believe in you, we support you, we encourage you, and then to support them in their growth and to nourish that growth, as she said, with good, sustained professional development. And through the humanistic lens, I don't want to hesitate to point that out, that really investing in our leaders as people and saying, we believe in you, you can do this. And in this moment of pandemic and recovery, when we could all be down and out and miserable and sort of angry and frustrated every day, that we have to push that to the side for the benefit of the young people that we're so richly blessed to serve, and to say, this is our moment to lead, our moment to shine and to step forward as leaders, as principals, as superintendents, as other leaders, as teachers, and to say we're going to do everything that we can to give them all we have every day so that they can be as successful as they can be in spite of anything, pandemic or anything else.
Kisha, we have a few more seconds. I'd just love to hear, what is the one thing that you would say has made the biggest difference for you in your role as a principal in your career?
I think the one thing that has made the difference for me, no matter in what school that I've been at, what challenges I've had, has been having a principal mentor coach. And not always one that has been assigned to me in a district, but someone that's a thought partner that constantly challenges me and how I think, and really pushing me to challenge the status quo. It's that level of ongoing support and mentoring that has made the biggest difference for me as a principal.
Well, thank you all so much for all you do for bringing just this positivity to the challenges that we're facing and reminding us all just how important people are and relationships are. And thank you for being here. After the break, we will be joined by Senator Don Davis and Shirley Prince, the Executive Director of the North Carolina Principals and Assistant Principals Association.
Education Matters is brought to you each week in part by Town Bank, serving others.
I'd like to welcome to the show Senator Don Davis and Dr. Shirley Prince, the Executive Director of the North Carolina Principals and Assistant Principals Association, or NCPAPA. Thanks so much to both of you for joining us today. Senator Davis, I'd love to start with you. Why is it so important that we're talking about principals today?
Absolutely. Principals are the key to our schools in many ways. A good principal is going to be the pathway to making sure we have the best teachers inside of our classrooms, and a good teacher can truly turn the life around of a student. So we have to continue to have conversations about how to make sure we're doing the right thing to get good principals out there into our schools.
And Dr. Prince, something I know you talk a lot about is, and work a great deal with, are the principals in our schools. What do we need to be doing to support our current principals?
I think our current principals need high quality professional development and support from their district offices. And beyond that, they also need more support personnel. We have a board made up of 16 principals who are former principals of the year in their regions and so on. And the very first legislative priority that they wanted on our short list was more support personnel so that they could do all the things that they know they need to do for each and every student.
And Senator Davis, we talk a lot about wanting to be able to both recruit and retain visionary leaders who also deeply understand teaching and learning. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit from a policy perspective. What are some of the issues that you see emerging, especially around school leadership?
One of the things that continue to emerge is the conversation around salary. And we have to make sure that we are offering good salaries. At the end of the day, I believe you get what you pay for. And if we are not going to honor the profession, with the salary that's deserving of an administrator, then the results are perhaps not going to be as great. So to me, that's one of the conversations. Not only that, but when we talk about broader policies, and especially right now during the time of this pandemic, we have to get the resources in the school to allow administrators to succeed. Going through this process, there are many points where I'm sure even administrators are experiencing some degrees of depression and just trying to figure out, or the stress of how we're going to pull this all together. So resources that allow them to be successful leaders in their schools, I think is also critical from a policy perspective.
Building on Senator Davis's comments, I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about both professional learning and those supports that he just referenced, but also this important issue of principal pay and salaries so that we can recruit and retain high quality and well-prepared principals.
Absolutely. Well, I couldn't agree with Senator Davis more. It's obvious that he understands the importance of principals, all the investments that we make in public education. If we don't have a really effective principal leading the school, we can't optimize those investments. And the principalship is the fastest and most effective way to improve a school. And with that said, I think that when our compensation system for principals was totally revamped a few years ago, there were some good things that occurred, and then some things that we think still need to be improved upon. One of the things that really was good for our the workforce of principals is that we started paying some of our newer principals more. They had been stuck at low levels for too long. But what happened In addition to that is we weren't really incentivizing those principals at the upper end of the profession to remain in the profession. And they are some of our strongest principals because they've weathered all these years of very rigorous accountability and they've proven themselves. So we want to hold on to these principals. So we need to look at ways to incentivize principals remaining in the profession. There's now no feature recognizing experience in the compensation system. Also, the bonus, we are very supportive of performance bonuses, but we believe that the bonus is making up too large of a chunk of a principal's salary. And because the measure of the performance bonus can be so erratic, principals really don't know what they're going to be earning from year to year. And this pandemic has created an uneven playing field for principals who deal with no broadband in their district, a lot of poverty in their district, and students not having support that they need. So we need to look at all those things.
Thank you so much. And Senator Davis, switching a little bit to the legislative session, as you are well aware, the Leandro Short-Term Action Plan lays out specific recommendations to improve not only the profession for our school leaders, but many other aspects of public education in North Carolina. And so I am curious to see what your thoughts are about how that might play into this legislative session, or other areas that you're pursuing or your colleagues are pursuing that would help to support our principals.
There are many conversations that are emerging now around the General Assembly, around Leandro. And let me say it this way. This is what we know as of date. We know that now it's been declared by a judge that our students, some students in the state have not been afforded their constitutional right to a sound basic education. We know that. We know, secondly, that the courts have not abandoned this case. And right now, what I believe is front and center is what are we willing to do then as leaders in the state? Because we must continue to invest in early childhood. We must make sure that every child has an opportunity to have a favorite teacher. We all remember our favorite teachers, right? And that means we need quality teachers in the classroom. We need to support the administrators so they can have good schools. All of this is relevant, as well as looking at the formula that works to get the resources to our students and professional development opportunities. All these things are important. We know this. And let me say this. We saw then with Leandro these challenges before the pandemic. I believe the pandemic now is showing that there are likely to be even larger learning gaps. So it's time now more than ever, I believe, that we step up to the plate to begin to mitigate some of these tenets of Leandro, getting some funds, but putting funds in place. Obviously, these are still economic difficult times for our state. Even though there's federal dollars lining up, there's still the rainy day dollars, and because we did not pass a budget, there's unreserved. So I would like to see us walk away with some level of commitment, and I think our students deserve it.
Dr. Prince, I wonder if very briefly, if you could just talk a little bit about principal preparation programs here and how we're getting these individuals who lead our schools ready and what we might need to do in terms of those.
Almost 5 years ago, there was a bill called Transforming Principal Preparation. And 5 organizations were selected as the first grantees. And what this funding has allowed us to do is to actually implement what we know makes for very effective principal preparation. Number one, very rigorous selection practices so that we get the best and the brightest that have the propensity to lead adults and create the kinds of conditions that will allow every student to be successful. And then it allows the district to approach these individuals and say, hey, we're going to support you through your preparation program. We're going to pay your full salary during your internship, which, by the way, is a year long. And we are going to pay all your benefits, and we're going to pay your tuition. We just want you to commit to be a principal in North Carolina and do what we know you are able to do for students. These programs have worked on making their coursework much more relevant and applicable to the real world that these principals live in. And the information that we have gathered over the last almost 5 years will allow us to really identify how we can scale this across the state.
We are so fortunate to have leaders like the two of you here championing our principals, but also just understanding the roles and how important they are. So thank you so much for being here with us. After the break, this week's final word. A principal is critical in establishing and building a school's culture, vision, and approach to teaching and learning. In fact, school leadership is found to be the second most important school factor influencing student learning after teacher effectiveness. As I think about the schools across our state, so many dedicated, phenomenal principals stand out. They empower their teachers each day, and they know their students. Like the leaders on today's show, they are courageous, tireless, and deeply committed to our students. And we only see a small part of the work they do each day. This year has only exacerbated the challenges principals face and the complexity of leading their schools. When teachers, staff, families, and students have gotten discouraged or scared, it is our principals who are leading the way and modeling how we can move forward together. In recognition of the importance of the principal in each school, the Leandro Short-Term Action Plan calls for a system of principal development and recruitment that ensures each school is led by a high-quality principal who is supplied with early and ongoing professional learning and provided competitive pay. The recommendations include steps to expand access to high-quality principal preparation programs, expand professional learning opportunities for current principals and assistant principals, and update the state school administrator preparation and principal licensure requirements to align program approval standards with effective practices. We must also continue to improve how we recruit and retain our school leaders, as we've seen a reduction in candidates for these positions over the past several years. Assistant principals in our schools provide the potential for building the pipeline to the principalship, and we should work together to strategize on how to incentivize that talent pool and identify additional strategies to attract and retain candidates of color into the profession. North Carolina has significant programs, including those described by NC PAPA, the Northeast Leadership Academy, or NELA, the North Carolina Principal Fellows Programs, and others through our institutes of higher education that support educators to pursue the principalship. Addressing and improving principal working conditions is critical to optimizing learning conditions for our students. After ranking as low as 50th in the nation in principal pay within the last decade, North Carolina has worked to improve compensation. We are now ranked 3rd in the Southeast, but we must remain competitive. We can do more to improve how we compensate principals and to incentivize principals to lead low-performing schools. And we must ensure that principals have the human and financial resources and tools they need to attract high-quality and well-prepared educators. We must also reinstate retiree health benefits for principals, teachers, and all state employees, as this key recruitment tool was lost at the beginning of this year. Finally, we must acknowledge the complexity of a principal's role. Principals typically oversee 50 or more staff members, and even more in many of our high schools. They lead their teachers and staff so that they have the resources and support they need to meet the needs of all of our students. They maintain significant budgets and have many stakeholders, including our students and families. Principals make thousands of decisions each day that affect the lives of our students. We must continue to strive to honor these leaders through our actions. Thank you for taking time to learn and think about education. That's all for today, and we'll see you next week.